general.
in general.
So are you gonna be the presiding officer? Are you gonna do this? And then we'll, or
We
do
have
you want me to do it?
We
and
have to
you're gonna-
decide who's gonna do that.
So who's gonna read this right here?
Whoever wants to. Right? Because the first one is a motion to
Just
designate
to the
somebody.
presiding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I can give you a little, give everybody a little heads up before we start. So, because you don't have a president or vice president currently, you'll have to decide on someone to preside over the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
And we gave you a sheet with some sample language that you could use to do that. That person then will start the meeting
Okay.
and will start on our agenda. And when we get to the point about the election of board officers, then that person will preside over the election for the president. Once you've elected a president, then your president will
Take over.
and then will then preside over the portion for the vice president. We've added a topic at the end of the meeting, talked about a board vacancy, so we can kind of talk about what your options are at that point. And you don't have to deal with that tonight, but you can if you want to.
Okay. So it's 6 o'clock. You want me to go ahead and start?
Well, let's go
Yeah.
ahead and,
Are you guys ready? Well, it actually
can-
says that we designate and then we do the
Oh.
pledge, so are we good with
I
that?
already can't read an agenda.
So I would move we designate Mark Rude as the presiding officer.
I was looking at this one. Second.
Do we have to do the
Yeah.
vote? Okay, so all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? So, thank you, Mark,
Okay.
for your willingness to do
well,
that.
thank you for that. And with that said, let's open with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd have to say, I'd never experienced that before, so that was... I think I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda. And some of you may remember how we do that since we've done modifications.
Do you want me to say with the following amendments?
Yes, that would be
Okay.
great.
The amendments would be, 1, additional certified and classified personnel actions as presented, item number E-3, and number 2, add item I, new business, discussion of Board of Education vacancy.
So taking that as a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, have a motion as second. Already, is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote. We will vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, we have an agenda. Let's see, public comment. Do we have any? Okay. Nathan has asked to speak. Nathan, welcome. 5 minutes. Thank you so much for being here.
Not a problem, I won't take that long. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to speak today, school board and staff, and I appreciate all that you guys are doing. And I understand we're here to start a new year and a new beginning and a new chapter in your times as you serve the community. And so I appreciate that. And I want to say thank you for your willingness and willingness to put yourself out in the community and be leaders in the community and make a difference in the community. And to, as we all strive to put together a great educational community and a process here, and the great things that happen in this little community that we call Garden City, as awesome as it is, I'm proud to call it home and have been here for the last year and a half. With 2 children in the school system, I have a vested interest, of course, to see it succeed and even to be a leader in our area. And I thought about how it is also a leader in the state area and this whole area in southwest Kansas. And when it comes to graduation rate, I want to see it grow and be better, as I hope we all do. I thought about how the success of every student enters into our mindsets in every decision that we make as a part of the community. As my wife is now a part-time teacher in the school system, and We always want to do our best to make it good for the entire community. And I thought about how it's our responsibility as a community and members to make decisions wisely, of course, financially, and it's in our best interest to make good decisions for all the members of the community and the staff. Of course, it does make no difference our personal feelings, our hurts, or even our frustrations often. I want to remind us all of our responsibility as public servants to do what's best for the students in our school system with every decision. And the decisions that you make have ramifications well beyond this meeting and even in your time on this board. And I take those things and I remind us all of our decisions that we make on a daily basis. Our decisions can change the culture and the morale of the school system and really affect the quality of the education that every student receives, and how awesome we want to make sure that goes forward with here in our community. I hope that you all understand the weight of every decision that you make, as I've seen and been a part of sitting on that side of the desk in certain committees here in the community. But my dream and my vision, I can imagine, is in alignment with yours, to be a place where the students can learn, be their very best, and can achieve whatever they put their mind to. And I'm excited that my kids are a part of the school system, and I won't pull them from the school system. I want them to be and gain everything that they're putting their mind to and do a great thing. I have the utmost confidence in the leadership that's in place and have been supportive of every decision that have been made, even the hard ones that have to be made in your positions. And of course, these are challenging times, and I hope you as a board embrace the ideals that every child needs consistency in their life. And I know you're planning on doing that and making great things. The reality is that we all do need consistency, especially in these troubling times. And so I thank you for your service and willing to make those decisions. My hope is that we all achieve what we want to see in our school system, being leaders and being what we are known for as greatness in this community. And so I thank you as you serve, and all of the staff in every building as they serve, as we appreciated all of the staff this year as a part of the church as well. And as we work together as a community to make the great things happen. I just want to say a quick prayer for you. Father God, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for each and every one of these that are here. And we ask, Father, that you give them wisdom as they make decisions in these next years to come, in these next moments. Lord, I just ask for strength and protection over all of our students in each and every classroom as they enter through those doors, each and every staff member. Lord, we pray for those that are not feeling well, and we just ask that you be with each and every one of them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other correspondence or anything? Okay, thank you very much for that. That brings us, I think, to D1, which is election of Board of Education President and Vice President. And so I think it's my job to declare that the nominations of the office of Board of Education President are in order. Board members should make nominations, move that nominations cease, and cast vote in the usual manner. Most of us are familiar with that. Following the vote, the newly elected president will assume the chair, and then we'll move on to the vice president position. So with that, I'll entertain nominations for president of the board.
I would like to nominate Jennifer Stanley for president of the board.
Okay. And I don't believe we need a second. These are just simply nominations. So other nominations for president. Okay. Normally there's sort of a quick question. Will you accept that position?
Yeah.
Okay. That seemed to be the right time to get that information. Then do I have any motion to cease nominations?
I would make a nomination to cease nominations.
Motion to cease, okay. I'm seeing a consensus here. Is that something we have to vote on? Okay, I need a second, I think.
I'll second.
Okay. And then, just to follow protocol, any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Okay, all in favor of Jennifer as president? On ceasing nominations, thank you. All in favor of ceasing nominations, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, same sign. Okay, well, with that, I think we have one nomination, and so you are elected, isn't that right? Do we need to vote on that again? Okay, I'll get my parliamentary down here. So now we are ready to consider the nominee for president. With that, all in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, congratulations.
I think you need to move here because that's where the gavel
Or we
is.
just move the gavel.
How do you want to do it? It's okay just to move the gavel?
Yeah, looks like that would be the simplest.
I think you need to ask the president.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Your first
I'm not sure you want to give me this.
decision.
It's gonna
You are in control.
go on the left side. I don't know if that protocol's right or not. Okay, I'm sure I'll mess this up right away, like not talking into the microphone. Hey, Mark, show me where I start.
You
This
are-
one, okay. So I believe I'll declare that nominations for the office of Board of Education Vice President are in order. So, nominations?
I'll nominate Dana Naniga as vice president.
Mark, do you want me to,
You can if you would like.
do you want to run?
Sure.
I nominate Mark Rude for vice president.
Good, we have a race.
Any more nominations? Okay, so then we will need a motion to declare that nominations cease.
I so move.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Okay. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay. Motion's passed, so then, do we need how do we do this when there's,
And so you have two,
we only do this once a year, so I don't remember.
both have accepted.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would just, the issue here is you gotta have 4 positive votes. It's not just a majority, so you have to have 4 for one or the other.
Okay.
So,
You're good with vice president?
I am?
Okay.
Sure.
I just hadn't heard you said that she was, I was just confirming.
I hadn't really thought it through. If you really want that role, Mark, I'm happy to.
I'm
step down.
behind you 100%.
Okay.
so I think you just need to, one or the other, but you have to have 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to decline respectfully and joyfully from the standpoint of thank you for the nomination and support the other nominee, because I think that would make it easier for the vote.
How does the rest
So-
of the board? Any other discussion on that?
I think,
Do you have to vote on it?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Oh,
if we voted both ways?
if I withdraw, that's not really a vote, is it?
Correct.
Oh, it is,
No, I
okay.
mean, you could withdraw it.
And then we would just vote on Dana.
On Dana, so I'm withdrawing, if it pleases my fellow board members. I'm withdrawing.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that should make it easy.
so we still have to vote though, right?
You're right.
Okay.
So then we'll need a motion.
With that, I move that the nomination cease and we cast a unanimous ballot for the nominee for vice president.
I'll second.
Does that still work? Okay. So, any discussion? Okay. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Congratulations.
Thanks,
Congratulations.
Now you
congratulations
can
to you.
keep me in line.
Yeah, I'll try.
So now we're moving on to the resolution, is that correct?
No, we should be moving, yes, thank you. So now you need to decide, you have the opportunity to elect officers in January or in July. Typically, for the last 3 years, I would say, since the state changed the school board elections from April until November, the board has chosen to have their officers run along the same cycle as the school year. So we elect in
in our board book too, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for in the board book.
Yeah, I would remind the board that, you know, we do a lot of organizational things in July, at our first meeting in July, kind of an organizational meeting. So a lot of things tends to make sense that kind of follows the school year, but there's nothing that says that it has to be that way. It's however you want to elect your officers. So it's really a choice of July to June or January to December.
Yeah, and I tend to want to, I'm just a little more in favor of keeping with the way we have operated traditionally. I think the legislature acted here a couple years ago and created this situation where we have to either reorganize in January or just simply act to stay with our historic approach. And so I'm just expressing my interest to see us keep with that regiment of the school year. I think it'll be cleaner. We can always change it, actually, but for now, I would like to see us stay with that.
And I was gonna say the opposite, just because I feel like if we're in a situation like we are now, where a former chair doesn't get reelected, it kind of fits with the election process. But I don't have a strong feeling either way. The way we've done it has worked. And maybe this is a unique situation this year. So
Yeah.
it just makes me think if
Thank
this is something that happens more often because of the changes that they made, then it does facilitate it changing it.
Anybody else?
I have a question. So we just elected a president and a vice president. If we stay the way we're doing it, do you serve till the end of June and then we do another one, or do you serve for 18 months?
6 months.
So 6 months?
So
Yeah,
could we vote in June at that time to not do nominations and re-elections and just continue with what we have?
You haven't seen me do my job yet.
Yes.
Are you saying you want us to redo it in June,
Just kidding.
just in case?
I'm just kidding.
yeah, I think we can. We have that opportunity. And I'm not, steadfast to this opinion, but I know it's kind of fun to work through the year, and I use that term in that it's kind of fun to be able to attend the high school graduation and hand out the diplomas, and there's sort of a consistency there that we've enjoyed. Nothing magic about it, and so this legislation had put that sort of twist on there, I think to logically align with elections. So, it can work either way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I would like to, point of clarification, Steve, the comment you had just made, and help me, fellow board members, if I misunderstood this, but we could take another look at this in 6 months, as far as the organizational thing.
Yeah, if you do the 6-month option, when you get to July, you could re-elect the same people in the officer positions and continue them, or you could transition to different officers. If you choose the January to December option, then these will be your officers for 2022.
Okay, so that's the difference.
And I'm, at this point, I'm kind of partial to keeping it where we change in July, just because of the calendar, the school calendar year, but I'm kind of open to either too, so.
How disruptive is it to switch officers during the school year? What's your potential pitfalls of?
So we've never really done that. We organize a lot of things around the school year, and Jennifer will find that she and I probably communicate 3 or 4 times a week. We plan out agendas for the year, kind of topics we're gonna cover. Just a lot of things seem to go with the school year. That would certainly make the most sense to me, but anything can be done. We can certainly work around it if it's the board's pleasure to do January to December, but.
If you think about it, it's kind of interesting, because if we go just for stick with our historic routine, and we go into July or June, then we can revisit it then, and really for another 6 months, because then we're required to revisit it again in January.
Right.
So,
That's true.
Do I need to read the resolution or not until after we have a motion and decide?
I think you maybe give a flavor for which route you want to go and then read the resolution that route. Is there a consensus, and then you can read the resolution that way and approve it?
Lynn's looking at me. Do we kind of have a consensus which way we want to go, or I don't want to lead you in a certain direction based on my opinion, but,
I'm fine to keep it the same too, if most
Yeah.
people feel like 6 months is a good time to reevaluate it.
Okay. That keeps some options open that
Mhm.
way, I think, since this is something new for us.
Sure.
it does.
Can I entertain a motion?
Do you have to read it, or?
Do you want me to read it first? Okay.
Yeah,
Resolution to establish election of school board officers. Whereas KSA 72113 requires Board of Education to elect the board president and vice president at the first meeting on or after the second Monday of January of each year, or at a later meeting date during the calendar year, if so determined by the board at the first meeting. Whereas the Unified School District Number 457, Finney County, Kansas, must act each year on or after the second Monday in January, or at a later meeting date during the calendar year, to establish when it will elect its president and vice president. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of Unified School District Number 457, Finney County, Kansas, will elect its school board president and vice president. And I assume I read the July one then? At its first meeting of the Board of Education in July of 2022.
Yeah, and I so move that, if that's the way to proceed.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mark and seconded by Jackie. I almost forgot your name in the middle of my sentence. Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? Motion passes.
Good job.
And then we will move on to School Board Recognition Month.
yeah, so this January happens to be School Board Recognition Month, and so it's kind of a tradition in our district that we take this time and recognize our board members for their service. A lot of people don't realize that school board positions are elected but unpaid positions. So board members dedicate a considerable amount of time and effort to carrying out their responsibilities as board members. And we think it's important that we take a few minutes and recognize that. So I have certificates for each of you that I will hand out to you down front. But Roy would like for us all to come down and get a picture together, so.
Okay.
Cheers.
I guess we hold it and smile, right?
Ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you.
Dr. Curlett, the resolution, can we go ahead and sign that? during
Yeah,
the
if you
meeting?
want to start it
Okay.
around, you bet, that'd be great.
And then we'll move on to another recognition.
So we are really pleased tonight to announce that one of our staff members has been selected for some national recognition, and it's my understanding that she is one of 17 finalists for a National Life Changer of the Year award, and due to her work here in Garden City. So I'm going to ask Michelle Scholl to come up. Michelle is our Health Services Coordinator, and the work that she has done over the last 2.5 years, but changed significantly about February of 2020 to do everything possible to keep us in school, to keep students and staff healthy, and it's phenomenal, and she has made such a difference in so many people's lives. So tonight I get to present her with a certificate recognizing that she's in really good shape, but we don't know a time frame yet, but sometime over the next few months, a decision will be made whether or not she receives additional recognition, but she's in the top 17 across the country, so congratulations.
Oh, that's awesome.
And now we have the district audit report.
Good evening. I'm Teresa Dazenbrock with Lewis Hooper and Dick. I have with me Lisa Axman. She's going to run the slides tonight and hopefully be my laser pointer, since it doesn't work so well on this.
Doesn't work on those, yeah.
So, anyway, we're presenting the June 30th, 2021 audit. Just to let you know, we have gone through it in detail a number of times with the administration, with the audit committee. More than happy to sit down with any of you one-on-one later after the board meeting to answer questions. It's a little difficult to go through a 71-page book in the few minutes we're trying to devote to it here this evening. So feel free, we're more than happy, myself or Lisa, to sit down and go through any questions you might have. But just some highlights then this evening. Starting out here with this first graph, actually comparing the budget per pupil and the mill levy for the general fund under the state financing formula that we've been working under since 1994. You can see there we started in with a base budget per pupil of $3,600 at that point in time. The mill levy to fund that at the state level was set at 35 mills. And the state held that mill levy for about 4 years there, then dropped it down to 28 mills, and then in 1999 dropped it to 20 mills, and it's been held at that level ever since then. The intent at the time, I believe, was that the budget per pupil that would be funded by that state aid would keep pace with inflation. Unfortunately, that's not what's been happening. So the challenges you as a board are dealing with are the gaps that have occurred between the pink line, which is the base budget per pupil that the state allows, and the triangles, the blue triangles, which is where the expenditure budget per pupil level would be if we had kept pace with CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So as a result, you can see that gaps, there was a period of years in there where it kind of narrowed, but since then it's been growing again. Here for your 2022 budget year, you're going to be dealing with a gap of $1,752. And you as a board, past boards have done a great job in managing that gap by making use of the local option budget, the supplemental general fund, by the cuts you've had to make across the board, and then also in how you've changed the funding allocation and use of your capital outlay funds. So that's kind of the challenge you've had. Hopefully, though, here, as the state looks at the funding mechanism going forward, hopefully the formula will get changed so that it's linked more directly to CPI, and those gaps won't continue to grow on you. I think that's the preliminary discussion anyway. The next graph then is more just the history of 457, comparing the full-time equivalency of student numbers with the base budget per pupil and the mill levy. Now this is across all funds when we're looking at the budget per pupil and the mill levy. So the mill levy is the red line on the bottom, and you can see over the 10 years here, it's stayed pretty consistent. Fiscal year 15 was actually the lowest in that period, and then here in fiscal year 21, we're at the second lowest. In that time, the green bar is the full-time student equivalency that the district had. It's stayed fairly steady. It does have slight declines, though, over the years. We're actually down about 575 full-time equivalency from 2012 to 2021 in that 10-year period. And then the blue bar across the top is the budget per pupil that we've actually spent. And it's going to change year to year. Largely, the bigger changes occur as we have big capital projects. So you see there from 2017 up to 2019, some of that increase occurred as we completed capital projects, new school buildings and such. We also saw some significant increases in 2020 and 2021 as you had additional federal grants this year, those 2 years that we were spending. Some of that increase also occurred in 19. So then looking at just the current year expenditures for the district for fiscal year 21, this is across all the funds of the district. It includes everything. The only thing we exclude are transfers, because we don't want to double up on the expenses as a transfer out of one fund and then expend it for specific purposes in the other. So we do exclude those transfers. You can see here, instruction is the largest part of the total pie, total dollar we're spending. That instruction level this year increased from 44% the prior year to 46% this year. Most of the pieces of the pie have stayed pretty consistent. There may be some changes that were up and down, but it was kind of a reversal from what happened the year before. When we look at this overall, we're kind of concerned about, okay, where do we stand overall with instruction expenditures? Because that's one of the factors that the state looks at when they're looking at the district expenditures. And looking just at instruction there at 46% is a narrow view of instruction. It's basically just the teacher level. The direct instruction also includes, in our thoughts, student support services, because that's directly tied to working with the students, the instructional support staff, and then also the healthcare and capers, because the majority of that is directly related to the teacher salaries and expenses. So when we add those all together, in fiscal year 21, that accounted for 72% of all the expenditures within the district. And that's actually up from 70% the year before. Yes, Mark?
That was part of my question. Thank you for that. I just
Okay.
need to listen a little bit more.
Okay.
But is it, I mean, my understanding is that maybe not all school districts do that math the same, as far as what constitutes direct instruction expense.
Probably not, probably not.
Okay.
It's gonna vary. Everybody interprets a little differently. You know, even at the state level, when I worked with the state board for their school efficiency program, there was no consensus on how that was happening. So I think where, you know, some thought is that every expenditure of the district is related to instruction, because if you didn't have the buildings and the food service and everything else, you wouldn't be able to support those students and have them in school.
So there aren't specific guidelines on auditing on how to categorize
I don't believe
those?
so. At this point, they haven't been able to come up with that. I know the state kind of looks and tries to get a consensus, and in that everybody's in the 65 to 70% range. And I think when you take in these that we consider direct student support, student instruction areas, that the district is meeting that.
And I'm sorry to take more time here, but one more question. When the state does their evaluating, do they ask us for specific information and they do their own calculating? Or, in other words, our audit is not what they get to work with these questions on how much of our budget goes to direct instruction. Is that correct?
Yeah, and they give us specific guidelines for how to categorize our expenditures in these categories. But I think there's probably debate among which, when you say the state, who we're talking to. When we're talking to people at KSD, I think they would agree with Teresa's assessment that just because it's not in the instruction category doesn't mean it's not a classroom instruction-oriented expenditure. But we sometimes have political forces in the state that want to make it sound like schools are not getting money into classrooms. And again, I think what Teresa said, you know, if you look up there, what's our capital outlay?
2% under facilities acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, we do a significant amount of a bond payment right now on a project that affected about 5 schools, and that's where kids go to school every day. And that's technically not in the state's definition of instruction, but it has a big impact on the type of instruction that we can deliver to kids in our schools. So,
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I certainly was thinking in terms of the legislature.
Right.
So thank you for that.
So that was just the current year expenditures. Just taking a quick look at the next graph then, the 10-year history. Across all funds, it's kind of hard to see those trends. We have tried to make it a little more distinguishable by putting the axis on a multiple of 10. So those numbers are growing quicker there than you think. Some of the key things, though, I might point to is in the healthcare and the CAPERS area. That area continues to grow, and I know the district has some plans and how they're going to maintain those funding and manage those expenses. The facility acquisitions and construction area, that has changed. 2012 was quite a bit more than more recent years, and that was with the completion of Abe Hubert and the high school projects in 2012, completed then based on the bond election. Instruction, you can see that does continue to grow and has grown in the last couple years. And then operations and maintenance, there was a slight increase there after 2012 as the new buildings came online in the district. So the next couple graphs deal with then how are we funding those expenditures. Looking first at the 2021 receipts across all funds again, and here again we are excluding the transfers, so we're not doubling up. Basically, the pie has stayed the same for the receipts, similar to as it stayed the same in the expenditures. If it changed, it was to kind of reverse what happened in the prior year. State sources are making up 68% of the receipts coming in to fund the school district. Federal sources add another 10% to that. some miscellaneous items in there, with the taxes then being the local dollars, making up 11% of the total. So for every dollar we're spending in the district, only 11 cents of it's coming from the local taxpayers, directly from the local taxpayers. Comparing then the dollars over the 10-year period, here again, that axis is in multiples of 10, so the numbers are growing a little quicker than you might envision there. We have excluded the transfers and the bond proceeds that funded that final 2012 construction project. So those aren't in there to distort it either. Tax-wise, you see it came down there in 2015 and has stayed fairly constant since then. That decrease in 2015 was when the state quit calling the 20 mills that they levy. They quit calling that taxes at the local level, instead that's state aid. So you see correspondingly a slight increase in 2015's state sources up there. Then the state sources came down slightly in 2019, back up in 2020, stayed constant in their funding in 2021. As far as the federal sources, this is the federal aid we get. The trend has been somewhat lower in recent years. It leveled off in 2013. We did see it tick back up in fiscal years 19 through 21, in part because of the COVID money, also because of the $1 million that the district received towards the LINK program. It's showing up in there. And then the healthcare premiums saw some stair-step increases there until 2016. Then the district brought those back down and has held it very steady since that point in time.
I was hoping you were going to go over the fees. What is that considered, that last entry? It says fees, is that?
Okay, that's, a large part of that's gonna be the textbook rentals
Okay.
and that type of
That's
thing.
what I was thinking.
And some of those fees, they are down in this current fiscal year, Dana, largely because I think the district waived a number of those fees as you were dealing with the COVID issues. The actual audit report itself, I think you should have received a PDF copy of that. Statement number 1 is the snapshot picture of the district's funds, across all funds. It's on page 5 of that PDF bound book. In total, the district's funds ended the year at June 30th at $30.6 million. That was actually an increase this year of $2.4 million. Basically with that increase all going into the capital outlay fund. And that's planned projects that are in place, some delayed maintenance and stuff that the district is looking to take care of here soon. The supplemental general fund is one of the main operating funds, and with the general fund, supplemental general was down about $6,500 for the year. The district saw decreases in at-risk K-12, professional development, summer school, special ed, but the larger decrease was in the healthcare reserve fund this past year. It was down about $390,000 after a decrease of about $2.5 million the year before. And I know the board has been working towards stabilizing that fund and working with the insurance management companies to make sure that they're on track to maintain the balance in that at a level that's needed to help with the self-funding. Other increases then, I said the $2.4 million in the capital outlay was the largest. There was about a $362,000 increase in the bond and interest fund, and that was really because of a timing issue that occurred with the bond payment in the prior year. Contingency reserve, you're still maintaining that at the level it's been maintained at. We usually like to point out the debt outstanding at the end of the year because that's not a number that you as a board typically see in your monthly financial reports. The detail of this will be in the financial audit report in footnote 3D. There's a couple pages that actually cover all of the debt activity. At the end of fiscal year 21, we were at 85.8 million in outstanding GO bonds, general obligation bonds. That was down just over $3 million. The Build America bonds have been paid off, so we're just dealing with the, I'll say, normal portion of the GO bonds here from the refunding that was done in fiscal year 16 when the district refinanced the bond issues for a lower interest rate so that they could save about 2.4 million. And then we point out the employee compensated absences because that's not something you usually see either. That's for all the vacation discretionary leave that's available to employees. If everybody walked out on June 30th and you had to cut a check, it would have amounted to about $924,000 last year. That's actually down $14,000 from the prior year. So those are some of the highlights of the current audit. We always have a tendency to want to compare ourselves to how we're doing with others. And so we always put in a few slides that deal with a comparison to some of the other districts in the past year. And as we select these districts, what we're doing is looking at about 15 districts that range in FTE, full-time equivalency, from 5,000 to 15,000. Thinking that kind of puts us in the closest comparison range. Those schools have stayed the same over the years. Maybe one or two has changed in or out. Geary County Schools is typically in at the lowest. The yellow bar, ours is brown for the buffaloes. But the yellow bar is the mill levy that each of those districts levies to fund their activities. The red line is their full-time equivalency. So you can see Geary County is the lowest for mill levy at about 53.5 mils. They typically are the lowest because they're receiving a large portion of their funding from the military fundings available there with Fort Riley. Andover has been the highest for the last few years. They're at about 67.9 mils, so quite a bit higher. Here in Garden City, we're at 48.533 mils, so Andover's a little over 19 mils higher than we are. Comparatively, Dodge City's in there at 57 mils, just over 57 mils, 8.5 mils higher than Garden City. There's about a half dozen of them there in the middle that range from the 55 to the 59 mil levy range. And then you can see that the FTE fluctuates between the districts. There's about 5, I think there is, with Garden being about the 5th lowest, 5th highest rather. That mill levy then for each of the districts, the next graph shows you the composition of that. Everybody has the 20 mils, so that's the red bar. One of the items that fluctuates the most is the yellow bar for bonded interest. So it's going to be a factor of who's had bond elections to fund additional facilities within their district. And you can see that's why Andover is quite a bit higher. The green bar is the local option budget, the supplemental general fund. Varies based on if the district has adopted the maximum they can for that fund, which I think currently is at 33% of the general fund. Most of the districts are probably there. It looks like Goddard, Hayesville, they may not be. And then other is basically the capital outlay fund. Most districts have gone to the 8 mills for capital outlay. There are a few that use their capital outlay to keep their other mill levies in line overall from year to year. So I think Dodge City has a tendency to do that. So then we always show the taxes paid on the $100,000 home because when we talk about a mill levy at the organizational level, a mill levy is not worth the same mill to mill. But at the individual taxpayer level, when it's down to us, it is. We're talking apples to apples at that point in time. So on that $100,000 home, using the fiscal year 21 budget for each of these districts, you'll see Geary County, they were $454.53. That's their military funding, keeping that down. Garden City, we're the second lowest in there at $512. Again, Andover's the highest, $734. And Dodge City's right there in the middle at just over $610. And because I know we always tend to look at our triangle, just as a point of interest, Liberal is not in the number of students, the FTE range that we looked at, but as far as their mill levy, they run about 41, just over 41 mills, which would equate to just over $445. So they fall in between us and Dodge City. And then taking that to look at the taxes levied per FTE, here we're using the unweighted FTE. The taxes are going to vary with valuation differences from district to district, and then with the mill levy, keeping that in mind. Of course, it's pretty hard to beat Geary County with that military funding. It just isn't going to happen. Hayesville is the second lowest, Dodge City's number 3, Topeka is number 4, and we fall in at number 5 at $2,573 per FTE. And then just ending up with the mill levy itself here for 457, going back to 1994 from when the state financing formula went into place. What our mill levy has done in this 28-year period, we started out at 48.9 mills. 2022's budget, you're at 49.4 mills. So basically 2022 is really where you were in 1995, 27 years ago for mill levy. The larger increase in there from 2009 up to 2010 was the bond election for the new high school. That drove that one. So the audit report itself, you've got the PDF of it. Our report is in there at the front. Just to let you know, it was an unmodified auditor's report on the financials. There were some material weaknesses that we've reviewed with management and the audit committee. Those have already been resolved. There were no question costs on any of the federal programs. So we feel like everything's functioning the way you intend it to, hopefully. No problems involved. So, we are happy to sit down though, like I said, if any of you would like to go through in detail the audit report itself. Your first meeting, it's probably something you didn't want thrown at you. To go through the audit report or the management letter, we're more than happy to do that. So.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions or know what to ask? We don't, this is just a report, right? We don't need to have any action.
Do they accept this? No, just hear it?
Usually, I think most boards will say that they accept the
Yeah,
audit.
maybe a
I should
motion.
remember by now, but I don't.
I think a motion to accept the report, I think would be appropriate.
Yeah. I don't know if we're ready for that, but thank you so much for the
Yes.
presentation. And for your expertise. I know you've helped us for many, many years, your organization, and the context is very, very helpful too, so thank you so much for that.
Well, like I say, if you have questions, please reach out to us. If there's things you'd like to see in future presentations, let us know, so we can improve on our part too.
Thank you.
With that, I would move that we accept the audit as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the audit as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Great
Appreciate it.
presentation.
We appreciate the opportunity to work with you.
Okay, moving along, do we have any correspondence? Now, we approve the consent agenda, is that? Okay. Sorry, you're gonna have to baby step me into this, I
Oh,
wasn't
you're doing
prepared. Okay.
Madam President, I would move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? It's been moved and seconded, that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. And now for our board goals update, kindergarten readiness and early literacy.
I'm Brittany Shields. I am the Curriculum and Instruction Coordinator for the district this year, and I brought a crew of people with me.
Yay.
This is really our committee that started planning our ASQ Day, which we'll talk about tonight, and we've just continued talking about kindergarten readiness as a committee and where we're moving. So I invited them all to join us because they're really the experts. I guess I can introduce. We have with us tonight, we have Monica Diaz. She's the supplemental programs coordinator. So she'll be talking to you tonight. Mary Carlin is here. She's our early literacy grant coordinator. Becky Alexander is a first grade teacher at Georgia Matthews. She's on our kindergarten readiness committee as a, how many years did you teach kindergarten? Yeah, a long time. She's moved to first grade, but she looped with her class, so she's here as our kindergarten expert. We have Sarah Gare. She's an instructional coach at Garfield Early Childhood Center. And Melanie Garrison, who has a really long title because she's a couple things. She's our SPED TOSA at Garfield, so she works with special education there, and she's also half-time administrator. Assistant principal? Okay. So that's our crew. So I'll start us off and then they're each gonna share with us tonight. So really, oh yeah, I said I would run it and then I didn't. This started a few years ago, kind of our kindergarten readiness journey when the state mandated that I guess our state requirement is the Ages and Stages questionnaire that we collect from our parents. So this is really something that the state asks us to do. There are two portions of the ASQ questionnaire, Ages and Stages, And parents complete this information, and then we use this information, the teachers use it to differentiate instruction, to plan their purposeful playtime. So we're collecting that information from them. So we've tried to think of ways throughout the years to make this helpful for students. So if you go to the next slide, thanks, Glenda. This is an overall picture of what our ASQ participation is. Again, we're asking parents to complete this, and then once they've completed it, teachers will conference with them and explain the results to them. So the first year that we were really required to do this was 2018-19. Our participation was around 72%, and that year, because it was new, we built into the calendar, it was a school day but no kindergarten, and parents could come to the school and do the ASQ and conference with parents during the school day. We've tried it without doing that a couple of years. You can see our participation went down. Obviously COVID and all of those things are factored into this as well. Conferencing with parents was hard to do, so that really kind of sparked Monica, who was in my position before, to look at how could we increase our participation. As you know, kindergarten readiness is a board goal, so we want to make sure that we're looking at what we can do to increase that. So Monica was able to apply for a grant that we received, and we used that money to fund an ASQ day. We did a Saturday event, and our team's going to kind of talk about what that looked like. So I'm going to turn it over to Monica, who's going to share what the grant was and how the funds were used.
So working with this committee, we were trying to brainstorm, think out of the box, how could we get parents to help us. The ASQ is filled out by parents. It's not filled out by teachers. It's not like a state assessment where they come to school and take it. We are asking the parents to evaluate their kids. We do have some parents that find some of these questions on the questionnaire hard they may not have an educational background. So they needed support understanding how to administer the ASQ. Some of the questions asked are social, emotional, how do they play well with others? Do they share? Tell us about their fine motor. Can they, gross motor, can they skip, can they jump? Well, some of our families need help. Just how do I watch for that? Or I don't know, so can you help us? So this ASQ day allowed teachers, support staff, translators, even a nurse to be on hand for the day to help our families understand what this questionnaire was all about, how to complete it, how to submit it. It's online, so the digital part, the technology was hard for a lot of families as well. So this day allowed us to provide support for our families to complete and submit the ASQ screener. There just was an opportunity for this grant that was sent our way, and I reached out to our committee, some of the experts, like, what do you think we could do with this $25,000 that would help our district in completing the ASQ? And through brainstorming, the idea came up with, why don't we have a day where we can have all the staff in one place, all the families come in, teachers come in with pay on a Saturday, and help the families through the screener. We were able to pay for staffing, which included, there were some administrators there, there were some teachers there, para support staff, nurses, I think I said translators, but we had some of our translators there as well. We were able to buy, probably half of that money went towards staffing. The other half went to books, games. It was really exciting for the families because completing that was a task, but they knew they were going to get books and games things to support what we were asking of the ASQ. So if we were asking some fine motor developmental things, we would give them like Play-Doh so they could help develop at home some of the fine motor things that we were asking. Gross motor manipulatives, we had jump ropes because we knew they needed to work on some other gross motor skills at home as well. We gave out board games, puzzles, just about anything we could find educational, we purchased, and they left with a bag full of things to take home so that we knew at home they had some of the items to support what we were asking for kindergarten readiness skills. That's pretty much.
Monica, how many languages is the ASQ provided? Given that it's digital, can they select from a number of different languages, or?
I know, is it in Spanish or?
It's
I don't remember.
English, Spanish, French, which we don't have much of here, and one more. But that's the digital platform. I think they have available in other languages, but they're these.
Okay.
We did use the online translator.
The Propio.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had our Spanish, Burmese, Vietnamese translators on site to help even make phone calls to get parents to come to our
Awesome.
event on that day.
So what was the online translator? We use a program, Propio, right, I couldn't remember. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions about the grant? Right.
So our event was held on Saturday, August 28th from 8 to 4 at Forest Good Middle School. We divided our spaces up, so in the commons area we had Garfield early childhood students come, and then on the cafeteria side we had our kindergarten students. We had iPads, so when the families came in, they were able to put their students' information in, and then it brought up both of the ASQ forms that they needed to fill out. We had testing stations that had all of the materials, so for example, like a chalkboard and some chalk or a dry erase marker, I can't remember, books, Play-Doh, a ball, just some materials that if they needed help with those questions, the paraprofessionals that were there working that event could help them figure out what they needed to do in order to score that section. Once they were done, they were able to come over to a conferencing table with our teachers. We had preschool teachers as well as kindergarten teachers working there. We tried to have every elementary building represented as well. That way the families had a familiar face when they came through. And then they were able to conference with the teachers. They were able to ask questions if they had any questions about their child's development. If they had concerns about their development, we made those notes, and then those notes went back to the classroom teachers. And like Monica said, once they were completed, they got to go out into the hallway and get all of the free goodies that we had for them. We also had some community partnerships. Russell Child Development Center gave us some nice information to pass along. Due to COVID and the numbers at that time, we weren't able to bring in all the community agencies that we would like to have, but in future, if we were to do this again, we were thinking about having the health department there to help with shots, medical, dental, those kinds of things, as well as some other local agencies that provide events and activities for kids that are under the age of 5.
These are just some pictures, which
Oh,
comes
sorry.
of
Of
what the day looked like, and we felt like it was very successful, so.
We also provided childcare. A lot of the families came with multiple children, and some of them, well, we had a set of triplets that the mom had to fill out, two ASQs for each of those students. And then we had other parents that came in with, they brought their whole family. So we had some high school kids that came in and got some hours, and that was really good for both of them. So.
Oh, that's neat.
Oh, I'm not in yet?
Yep.
I'd rather not. Okay, Brittany showed you the ASQ numbers for the overall, the district, over the last 4 years. This was our numbers for Garfield. So we had, at the time that we did the ASQ day, I think we had around 450 students enrolled. Our data looks a little bit different, or can look a little bit different than kindergarten, because kindergarten has a hard
date that the collection stops, where we are allowed to collect all year. So we ended that day at around 50%, but then we increased over the next few weeks, and then past that, we've probably added another 50 or so to our numbers. So you'll see that the gray there is the non-participation. So those are families who didn't fill out the ASQ. And then the green shows that there's no concerns according to the parents, and the orange is the monitoring, and then the red is concerns. So. Questions about that method?
I have a question. So when you do this, do you follow up in any way with, like, does the teacher, because, you know, sometimes we think we know our kids, but you may not, or you only know your child in your environment, and the child can be very different in a different, you know, environment. So I just wonder if then you reevaluate this and see, like, okay, so this child we had concerns on, and this child we had no concerns on. And was that a true picture of that child? Like, is there a comparative data somewhere along the line?
The teacher data that. Oh, you guys use Savers. Yeah. So we do not use Savers. It does not go down to preschool level. But I think when we've talked to our teachers about this, because you know you get that ASQ and everything is marked that there's no concerns, and in the classroom they're seeing concerns, it just becomes a conversation starter.
Okay.
Between that teacher and that parent, because they can say, okay, well, great, what are you doing at home that is fostering those skills that we can do at school, or maybe it is that you see it a little bit different at home because they're your kid and you love them, and these are the things that we can do to get them to be using those skills correctly at school as well.
Thank you.
Good question.
Looking at the kindergarten students, our goal was to be at 75%, and we were at about 71% this year. So we felt good about the event and that we were able to get those numbers back up. We are looking and encouraging teachers to get 100%. That's difficult, but we did have quite a few teachers this year that reached that goal in the kindergartens. Overall, you can see here that parents felt that their students were doing really well, or they had no concerns about them socially, emotionally. So that kind of tells teachers that that area is going over. I know the district is spending a lot of time on social emotional development, and we're seeing that. Parents are seeing that too. Parents had the most concern about problem-solving skills for students, so that's something we can take back and see if we need to bump that up or what we can do to help in that area. And then on the next slide is kind of what you were asking. So this is an example of the conference sheets that the teachers print out after the ASQ is completed. And there's two different ones because they take two different surveys. So then the teacher takes this and they conference with the parent immediately. I know the kindergarten teachers see that as a real benefit because they get a real early conference. They don't have to wait until the October conferences. So they see them real early and can kind of tackle some issues they may have been seeing already in the classroom. And it opens up that communication for them. Kindergarten teachers do give the Savers. So the ASQ is data from the parents, but Savers is data from the teachers. As the kids get older, the kids take those tests themselves with the teachers, but in kindergarten, the teacher is the only one who assesses them on Savers, and that's kind of along these same lines as the ASQ. It's asking questions on how maybe they deal with changes to the schedule or how they handle confrontation and things like that. So then we're asking kindergarten teachers and other support staff that work with them to kind of cross both of those things to look at the ASQ and the Savers data and make decisions in their classrooms on what curriculum or purposeful play areas or recess areas that those kids need to spend time at. So then maybe during purposeful play, if you have a group of kids that are really struggling with
fine motor, they visit a fine motor state center several times during the week to develop that skill, as well as take things home to work with their parents. A gross motor, they may work with the PE teacher to come up with more things for those certain children to do during PE that are focusing on those gross motors. So we're asking them to use that data to then drive their instruction and then to also help parents find activities at home. Questions?
I do have another question, sorry.
You're asking good ones.
So my question is, at the kindergarten level then, so I see the value in conversation starters with parents and maybe getting parents to start thinking through some of these things, but you know, you always get, or we always find the questioning of so much testing. And so I wonder, do you as teachers or does your staff find significant value at the kindergarten level when the teacher also has to evaluate with the SABRs and the parent evaluation too, and having to, you know, really look through a number of different sets of data, and you know, I just we hit kids so early with so many tests, and I know that there is some value, but I just wonder if having two in the kindergarten,
Yeah. So the students aren't taking any of these tests, the parents and then the teacher are doing it, so it's not adding testing to the student's plate.
okay.
But I do think that the teachers, as I did, and I'm after conferencing with many of them, know that there is value in having the parents' input, and it also really opens up those doors when they need to have tough conversations because they've already started having them pretty early on. And lots of times I've found that parents are usually already aware that something is off, and so it really does just soften that, and you can get an early start on how to help with that situation. And a lot of times in these questions that we're having on ASQ and the things we're finding out early from it, there's a lot that can be done during the kindergarten year to help them overcome some of those things and
Great.
really get caught up. Luckily, we have so many kids that go through Garfield. We're kind of finding that they're catching a lot of what's going on, but it's just making sure we're catching all of them.
Okay, that's fantastic, because that was more my concern, was at the teacher level, like one more thing for y'all have to do. So
And
this is good
I
feedback.
do feel
Thank
like
you.
that, yes, sometimes does come into play. I'm not gonna say that no teachers feel overloaded by doing it, but I do feel like the data collected and the conversation and relationships developed early are more of a benefit than a takeaway.
That's great, thank you.
Anything else for me?
This is very fascinating, first of all, and data, you love data, but then you have to go through that process of the relationship development to get good information, and it's an exchange, it's a collaboration. It's fascinating, particularly for these young families or these young kids. And I know the teachers have just got to eat it up because it's just another thing that they can look at to go, aha, or whatever they're trying to figure out with a particular student. How big are the kindergarten classes again?
The cap is 23 right now. I know they don't all run full, but usually around at least 20, I think. Yes.
And is that, yeah, we'll go with that. And then is there a para, or is this all, this is the teacher?
My experience is that there's intervention support, so you may have people who come in and out, but there's not an all-day para in your classroom all day long. So it's usually the teacher and then some support staff in and out.
Yeah, and then I hear like PE, I heard you say teacher may collaborate with a PE teacher and that kind of thing. So there's some there. It's, first of all, it's a lot of kids and there's a lot of different levels that these kids are coming into our kindergarten class. And I think one of the greatest things we've done as a district is to have that early childhood center. And it's still a question of how effective are we in the early childhood. And then to get this grant, I just think that's exciting. And then to have the volunteerism of the teachers to come in and collaborate. This is just really neat. And so now I'm waiting for the next presenter to say, okay, are we going to get another grant? Are we going to be able to keep this up? So anyway,
I'm done.
thank you so much.
So, we received a grant from the Kansas Health Foundation called Communities Serving Early Learners. From that, we were required to build a coalition, which we called the Garden City Early Learning Coalition. So USD 457 is the backbone organization following a collective impact model. We put together a stakeholder group, so these are people that know what kids in our communities need. So we just have people from a variety of institutions and organizations throughout the community. I don't want to read them all, but you can see it's a great list. We have a great stakeholder group that are always coming up with innovative, great ideas, and they're very prudent with the money that we're spending. So then, part of what we want to do is get involved with the parents and let the parents learn from us how they can have an impact on their child's readiness for school, starting at birth. So basically the second part, the action events, are places that we've had contact with parents and children, have been able to talk to them, hand them information, hand them books, but mainly it's conversations. I have a great corps of volunteers that will come and support me, like at Cookies with Santa, so that when we're at a busy time, I'm not one person trying to talk to 3 people with busy kids, so we can all have a conversation and try to make the most impact at those fun things that we can. One of the really great things that we discovered was a program called Ready Rosie. It's basically an online platform. The grant has paid for subscriptions. Right now, the largest chunk of that is going to the Early Childhood Center at Garfield, and they are managing it really well. It consists of modeled moments. So once a week, either the teacher will send out a playlist developed for her kids in her class, or some kid that needs a different one for an intervention. So then those are sent through a text or through email to the parents with activities that they can do at home in their home environment when they're at the grocery store. They are modeled in English and Spanish. So it's 2 separate families, one speaking English, another one speaking Spanish. And then they are captioned, subtitled in many different languages. So they watch their modeled moment, either just the parent or the parent with the child. And the next thing they do is complete the activity or game, or they use what they learned to say and model how to improve your child's vocabulary while you're brushing your teeth, while you're in the kitchen. There are also research and answer videos that are on there from experts in the field, like Becky Bailey from Conscious Discipline, behavioral experts, psychologists. And so if a parent has a question like, why does my kid throw tantrums? I saw that one a lot come up. People watch that one a lot during Christmas. Because we can see what's being watched. So they have a resource that they can find out if that's the only way that they can find out, and they can start to help their child. The data and communication piece is really great. Each child has a dashboard that the family can monitor, and it tells them what
what standards they're meeting by doing this activity. It tells us what the child needs to work on. We can see how well they did. We can see how often they're utilizing the videos, and always have an intervention. We can communicate through email, through that Ready Rosie.
Mary, I'm gonna jump in. I updated your slide with numbers.
Okay.
This has been amazing at our school. So we have 354 active caregivers. That means that we have 354 families who are signed up with the app, which is a big number out of, our 500 and some students. And then we have 470 student profiles. That just means there's a few that haven't accepted the invitation from Ready Rosie. But 2,098 video views. And that's since October was when we rolled it out. So that's a lot of videos viewed. And of course, not every parent is gonna watch the entire thing and do every activity with their kids, but it's an opportunity for us to reach a whole lot more parents and families than we can at school. So we've very much enjoyed it, and our teachers have found it pretty easy to use. And like she said, I send out school-wide videos that go to all of our parents through ClassTag, our communication app that we use, and then teachers send out personalized ones as interventions for kiddos. So like the temper tantrum one, well actually I sent that out today for the entire school. But if a parent had a question about it before, that teacher could have sent that specifically to that parent, and then they would have gotten an expert opinion on what they could do with that. So we have very much enjoyed having this resource.
Could we have kiosks for that at Walmart?
I was gonna ask if we could get it at the high school level, because I could use some of those.
I think it wouldn't be bad.
Are you talking the temper tantrum videos?
Oh,
or that's what I
I'm
would-
sure
okay.
several. I'm sure there's several topics
Yeah.
I could
One of
benefit
the
from.
videos is managing screen time, so I feel
Yep.
like that fits.
Yep.
And it does go all up to third grade as well. And one of the comments that Mary did a promotional challenge over the break, and we had families who watched videos and then commented on them, and then there was a prize at the end for the most watched and commented on videos. But one of the comments that I got from actually a teacher in our school was that she did it with her older kids. So it wasn't just her young one who's 3-year-old and enrolled in our school. She used it for all of her kids, and so that was that's exciting.
I have a question. So you rolled this out in October, is that what you said? And then is there incentive? Like, do we give parents or kids incentives? Or sometimes there's games like on the actual, like certain apps have level up or get things like this. Okay, there's
not. And so that's yet another really great part of it. I mean, the fact that there's that many videos viewed without an incentive.
Yeah.
I think just the parents taking devoted time and playing a fun game with their child, I think that's a reward in itself.
Yeah. And then I'm assuming that this program probably gives data at the end of the year. So you'll be able to see how much every child or their caregiver got on, and that will be really fascinating to see the data of how much the parent engaged, and then the success of that child in the classroom. So, but awesome.
Wow.
It'll be a good resource for that kind of data, which is sometimes hard to get, so.
Yes, particularly from that age, I would guess. Sounds like fun.
Just to help me think through this, the Kansas Health Foundation grant, that helps establish this coalition and supports that. And then one example of the outcome of that was this Ready Rosie?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because that is quite the stakeholder group. I was curious, just to help me process it here a little bit, United Way, I think is one of the advocates of Yes.
Right, so we support them monetarily, and we're able to also subscribe children.
Okay, yeah, so I was just trying to think through how that Imagination Library comes into this group, and it's through United Way, I would imagine.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
okay. And us too, so, okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Anybody else? Thank you. I'm intrigued. This is my niche here. So, and thank you for all the extra time the teachers put in for this, because I know it's every minute you put in the classroom and then you add to the days and the weeks. But parent engagement is something we've talked about since I've been on the board, so you guys are making leaps and bounds. So, thank you. Okay. Next, we have the KISA report. And Teddy and I have enjoyed sitting in on the meetings that we've made it to. So.
Yeah, did you see my last email?
Yes,
So you've got a job to do now.
I know.
We make sure everybody has a job to do.
That's right. I appreciate that.
Can you get one? 'Cause that's
I've
yours.
got, well,
That's
it's
what
not-
it
it's not.
Yeah. That's what you need.
It should be the same.
I got something else.
Maybe I grabbed you the wrong. There we go.
Got it, okay.
What I passed out was just a copy of our strategic plan, our board goals, if you will, so that as we go through this, you have something to kind of reference and know what I'm talking about. I always appreciate a hard copy. I'm a visual learner. So, but what I'm going to do tonight is, this is year 5 of our KISA process. So KISA stands for Kansas Education Systems Accreditation. So with the state, that is a 5-year process. And in year 5, that is when the state determines if you are accredited or not. I can tell you from several conversations with Dr. Carlin, that's not a choice of not being accredited. So we will be accredited, hopefully June. I'm hoping that timeline, though the state says it could be August before we know. But what I'm going to do is kind of review where we are and where we've been and how the KISA process aligns with our board strategic plan. So it is a 5-year cycle. The state has us pick goals from what they call the 5 R's: relationships, relevance, responsive culture, rigor, and results. I will kind of warn you right now, when we talk about rigor, many times you've seen some presentations on rigor, and we talk about what's going on in the classroom. So with the state, what rigor means is, are you timely in all of your paperwork processes? So the audit, for example, is a perfect example of what they would view as rigor. So what we talk about as rigor when we talk about what the kids are doing in the classroom, the state refers to that as relevance. So there's a little bit of a difference in lingo, if you will. So as we talk, I may switch between the two, but I'm going to try real hard to stay on relevance, because that's what our goal is. So in year 1, there is a needs assessment with the staff, and we choose those goals that we want to work on. We have to choose 2 areas. During year 1, our needs assessment indicated that we wanted to prioritize relationships and relevance, which, like I said, is our rigor. And then the second thing we wanted to do was make sure that we align that to the newly developed strategic plan. So the same time that we are working on our needs assessment, the board and the district site council are working on what goals do we want to have our board work on for the next 5 years. So the two kind of went hand in hand, and the timeline just kind of happened to mesh together really well, and we were able to align everything. We chose relationships as one of our areas of emphasis, and it aligned really well with 2 of the top 5 board goals that were chosen. Board goal 3.4 is assessing indicators of unhealthy student behaviors. This is alcohol, drug abuse, and then providing those appropriate supports and resources for families.
Board Goal 3.5 is developing those partnerships in the community. That's businesses and industries, as well as Garden City Community College. So we're looking at our pathways and those partnerships. We're looking at partnerships with the elementary schools, and we're looking at those, for example, dual credit courses with the community college. The relevance goal, those are aligned with the top three of the top 5 board goals. So you can see your top 5 board goals that were selected in that first year align perfectly with what we wanted to do with our KISA process. So board goal 1.8 is incorporate Avid, which stands for Advancement via Individual Determination at all secondary schools. All of our secondary schools do have those programs now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the highlights a little bit later. Board goal 1.9 is that rigorous academic experience at all levels. So this is what we're talking about, that core instruction in our classrooms. Board goal 7.1 is the district technology plan, which went from the existing K-8 technology plan, the one-on-one initiative, and other district needs, which because of COVID kind of moved up that timeline, and we actually met that goal a year early. So in years 2 through 4, we just have to show growth on the district goals. So there's a paperwork packet that we have to submit. We have a visiting team that comes in and says, what are you doing? And asks questions, and we present to them and show them the growth that we're making in each of these areas. We do similar presentations to the board and show you guys how we're making progress on each of these different goals. We align it with the district goals, of course, and then we also report on compliance, state board outcomes, and foundational structures. So the foundational structures, compliance, and state board outcomes. Compliance just means that we're in good standing with the state. And I'm going to give a nod to our person there that is in charge of the slides right now, Heath. A lot of the compliance issues have to go through his department. So when it comes to are there any compliance issues, we usually look toward, is the district citing us on anything? That could be, it can also be special ed as a common one. So are we on improvement, for example, for too many seclusion restraints? That is one for an example. But it also is how many certified teachers do you have, and what kinds of mentoring are you doing for teachers, and a lot of things that go through Heath's department. So I'm happy to say that ours says in good standing, and we don't have any compliance issues, nor have we had all 5 years. The foundational structures and the state board outcomes, I've just kind of listed what these are, and each one of these areas we have to report out to the state on how we're doing. And then on the right-hand side, I've got what board goal that applies to. So not only do we impact the top 5 in this process, but because of the foundational structures the state asks us to report on, we are also reporting to the state on many of our other board goals. So the tiered framework of supports, that's our multi-system of support, our interventions, if you will. The stakeholder engagement, you just heard Mary Carlin give a wonderful example of stakeholder engagement. Those are the types of things that we have to put in our report at the end of the year to the state. Diversity and equity is another one. Communication and basic skills, and again, the ASQ is going to hit right in that area, so you heard some of them again tonight. Civic and social engagement, physical and mental health, arts and cultural appreciation, and then post-secondary and career preparation. Line out the state board outcomes and the foundational structures. Okay, state board outcomes is social emotional, kindergarten readiness, individual plans of study. So do we know, have we went through a process so the kids know which direction they're heading postgraduate? High school graduation, what are those numbers? And post-secondary success. Highlights from years 2 through 4 so far, no compliance issues. Our MTSS process has been strengthened with FastBridge, Dreambox, some of those programs that we've been able to buy with our ESSERS money. And we've been able to add additional intervention positions at each school. Now, I will note though that not all of those have been filled this year just due to lack of applicants. But we have been able to strengthen all of those. We have an award-winning arts program, that is theater, that is our cooking, all of the fine arts, several awards at the high school. And in years 2 through 4, we also added a social emotional learning advisory council made up of several stakeholders, so another stakeholder engagement piece, but lots of community agencies have come together and worked with us on supports for families, supports for students that we can do. One of those, another example is the partnership with Compass. So we have Compass that comes into our schools and provides therapy on site, so the students don't have to leave and miss more education because they're leaving. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question while you're on that topic. You reported it in the past about that element right there and how fortunate we are to have the help of Compass. So I'm curious how well that, I mean, is it still working well, that coordination? And does the SEL Advisory Council have any involvement in that coordination of the sites and the Compass involvement in that site?
No, I think. So
Okay.
The SEL Advisory Council, they have looked at things like our individual data. They were part of the group that looked at rewriting the policy on drugs, alcohol, tobacco a couple years ago. They helped with that. They helped look at and vet some of the Tier 1 curriculum that we used.
Okay.
They came in and talked about team teaching, say with the police department on the drugs and alcohol in our classrooms and bringing in those partnerships in the classroom. So they have not actually, Compass is one of those partners in the SEL advisory group, but they don't oversee that. That is a separate grant.
Okay.
So, and I will say the partnership with Compass has been very, very good. We hit a snag, I want to say about October, when they lost several of their therapists, and my understanding is they were down to 2 therapists, and so they were not able to come into the schools, so we're waiting for them to fill some positions to get back into the schools. They're still at the TEP, of course, and
Okay.
some of those higher needs areas. But they-
That's good to know, and I know that there's still stress out there, and
Oh, yeah.
and kids and families and teachers
Mhm.
are still working to cope. So I appreciate everything that they're doing, and particularly with your explanation, maybe doing to recover
Mhm.
and get back into that model that but certainly it only works if we're working together.
Right.
And, as opposed to one person doing something and that's their data, and
Mhm.
another person doing it and that's their data, but they're both dealing with the same situation or case or.
Yes, and I will give a shout out to Compass. We've had a couple incidences this year that were pretty intense, where we needed backup from all of our counselors plus Compass therapists. And we reach out with a phone call and they send everybody available.
Okay.
So that, I will say that partnership has been very, very good for us.
Wonderful, thank you.
Continued highlights from years 2 through 4, we did come up with a new drug, alcohol, tobacco policy that was passed a couple years ago. One-to-one iPad implementation, K-12. 3 schools won the Civic Advocacy Network Schools of Excellence Award. The graduation rate has increased, and we had our alternative school that was on improvement with the state for low graduation rate, has gone from like 44% graduation rate to 73% graduation rate. So some wonderful, wonderful things happening there. And the seal of biliteracy was implemented, and you're going to hear about that in just a little bit, I think. A sneak preview on what comes next. So the data will be reviewed from years 1 through 5, and we will look at our data as of the end of this first semester, and we will put that review together. So what did you accomplish over these last 5 years? And that is put together in a written document that you will get a copy of. The growth does continue with the Garden City Community College Partnership. We are focusing on Tier 1 instruction, rigor and relevance. I put them both together so that it doesn't matter which word you use, it's the same thing. We're using the new teacher project and increasing staff skill set. We're looking at standards-based applications, and we have staff collaboration and professional development that is focused on board goals. All of our schools have individual building plans that align with this KISA process, and they have goals. They also have to choose 5 goals for each building, and then those align with our 2 areas. But they can, if you want to do individualize, if you will, to what their building needs. But they do fall under those categories as well.
We will finish and submit our Year 5 report at the first part of March. Our outside visiting team is scheduled to come in on March 4th, and that is an all-day event. At that point, the reports will be reviewed by the ARC, which is the Accreditation Review Council at the state level. The accreditation will then be recommended to the state board, and they will vote on it, and then we start all over again. So it's just a continuous learning and improvement model, if you will.
Can I ask a question about the individual buildings? So do they do that just independently from like you or your team? Like they come up with that as a entity, like as their building?
Yes.
Under the umbrella.
Yeah, their building leadership team guides that process, but they very much individualize it to the building need, but it has to fall under one of those top 5 board goals.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Okay, and Jennifer is on the committee, so.
I think Teddy's on the committee. They let me come along.
There you go.
Yes, and I've enjoyed attending the meetings that I could make it to. The team works really well together. It seems like there's some good communication and planning, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, next, curriculum report, Cecile of Biliteracy from Garden City High School.
Nope, I can do it. I'm just here to introduce Seal of Biliteracy. Mr. Perez is the head of the foreign language department at the high school and pretty much leads. We have a small committee of about 6 people who work on the Seal of Biliteracy and all the expectations and the testing, and he has put a wonderful presentation together, so I will let him take it away.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for letting me to share with you all this information about the Seal of Biliteracy. We are so excited about the Seal of Biliteracy. We were not once we started in Kansas. We jumped into the wagon like the 3rd year, but we were the first ones on this side of the state, that's for sure. The seal started on the east side of the state with the biggest schools over there, but it's been growing. And also our program is being growing as well. I believe that this is our 5th year with the seal, and the first 3 years we made like a few attempts on figuring out what was going on. We only have a few seals produced every year, and they were mainly through the AP class in Spanish. But now we realize that we are sitting on a gold mine. We live in a really multicultural city, and if you go to the high school, the ESL department, you can see the people from speaking every single language in the planet. So it is so exciting that we have all the resources over there, and we just need to take advantage of that. What is the Seal of Biliteracy? What the state wants with it? Actually, pretty much every state in the United States that have a Seal of Biliteracy. Also, there is a national one. The state Seal of Biliteracy, you can get it while you are in the high school. After you graduated, you are not eligible for the state Seal of Biliteracy. You need to go with the national one. What we want is that to honor those kids that they just not speak English, but also they have other languages that they, in their backgrounds, their houses, their community, and they need to feel proud of all those skills that they have. We are just seeing the students like on just one single side, but they have all their sides as well, all their skills, and speaking a foreign language is another one. It doesn't have even to be a foreign language, it can be sign language to get a Seal of Biliteracy. So what we want is to encourage people to be part of the World Village and to improve their employability, because the way that the Kansas State frames this seal is by the results. Is a person going to be able to get a job and function in that job? With a silver seal, you can do basic tasks and manage with the normal situations in a job. But with the golden seal, you're basically able to do anything that any other person can do in your job, and not only in English, but in any other language. It's not, we need to understand that it's not just about the speaking a language, it's also about reading, getting an email, or writing a report in a different language. It's not just answering the phone. So we started with the seal basically with Spanish, but we are trying to expand that information into other languages. We started testing last year with French, and we are planning to get other languages into that as well. The seal, as I was mentioning before, we have two levels. There's the silver seal and the golden seal. The functional level, the one that you can just manage to answer a phone call, deal with a client, and basic routine works. It's the intermediate mid. And then we have the gold, that you are able to do anything in your job in any language. The one that English or the other language that you can speak as well. You can get more than one seal. You can get a seal of biliteracy with the Spanish, with the German, and whatever other languages you can also speak. There are several ways that you can get the seal, and there are several, you need to pass not only the English component of the seal, you also need to pass the foreign language. There is not only one way to assess that. You can get the English part by getting with the KELPA, with 4 or higher. You can also get the state assessment. You can get also with an AP class in English, or with the ACT. And the Kansas requirements for the seal of biliterators are really rigorous. I would say that this is one of the highest and strongest among all the other states. For the non-English section of the test, we can do that if the student can prove that they are competent in the language by an AP class, or taking a test like a STEM test and the Apple test, or in languages that they don't have any standardized assessment. They can do a portfolio, and they also can obtain the seal of biliteracy. When we started, we only offered the seal of biliteracy through the AP class, and obviously it's a small class, and we didn't get as many, but that was the first 3 years that we started with this. But last year, it was like wonderful. I was so excited that the program took off, because we were a little bit bolder, and then we decided, hey, let's try and do something else. So we decided to implement the STEM test, and since it was our first year doing that, we decided that we were going to start with a small class, or a small group, only for the ESL department, passing the KELPA, and only for the seniors. But this year we're expanding that. So we are going to also start with the juniors and seniors for the ESL. So we are going to be seeing more and more recipients for the seal of biliteracy this year, hopefully. And then there is a process in which we need to prepare as teachers the kids for the test. And then also they have to formally apply to get the seal. They take the test, and they need to be competent in 4 sections, 4 components. It's not just speaking, it's also listening, writing, and reading. They need to pass each one of them. If they fail, or they don't get the score, the minimum score for one of them, even if the composite score is above the level, they don't get the seal, because they need to approve every single section. That's the part of the difficulty. And what I like about this is that this recognition comes from the independent source. It's some national companies that they are doing the test. They create the test, and they use the standards to compare in an objective way the levels of all the languages in every one of our students. And it's not something that I create in my class, and it can be different from any other teacher from other district. We are talking about if my student gets a seal, it's exactly comparative with any other school in the state of Kansas. So it is something that we can test, and we can say, hey, this person, if he got a gold seal, this person can be competent in the language, coming from anywhere. What we have been doing also is that we would like to start promoting this, because we understand that even though we do this during the high school, and if they pass the test, they only receive the recognition when they graduate. So we have a few kids that they fulfilled all the requirements last year, but they haven't received the seal because they get it when they graduated. So they will be getting that, for example, this year or the following year. And we understand that we need to start promoting this from the high school. So we need to start encouraging people in the middle school kids to start taking foreign language classes, or they can be using their own language, even if it's not offered in the school, to get this recognition. Because the main goal in here is that once you get the seal, you can go to a college, and then some colleges are starting to accept that, like this person got a gold seal, so this person doesn't need to take the first semester of that language in college. Some other ways that this can be useful for the kids is, for example, and for the community as well. Because if I have a company and I need a person who can answer the phone in Spanish, and I can either do the testing and spending all the money assessing each one of the people that work for me and spending that money, or I can just go and check the credentials and see if this person has the seal, and this person is a kind of outsourcing the requirements for knowing if that person can speak the language or not. So I believe that we should start promoting that also to the community, to the people that, for example, the companies around the area, that if they want to hire someone with a language, for example, a nurse, a cop, or Tyson, they can trust the seal that if the person gets it, this person can have the competence to use all these skills in the work environment. So we would like to expand the seal of biliteracy not only to Spanish, which is the ones that we are getting right now, also but to French and to any other language is spoken in the ESL department. And we are a big group we have Mr. Cobb, the public service principal. We have Monica Diaz also helping us, which is being really helpful. Monica, she managed to locate some funding to get the kids tested, and that made a big difference in the program. So we obtained 4 times more seals last year than the previous years. And that was because we are now expanding other ways for the kids to test, to assess their level of competency in the language. It's not just the AP class, now it's the Apple test, sorry, the STEM test. We are thinking about doing the Apple test this year. And also, tomorrow I'm talking to the curriculum committee, so we can create another AP class for Spanish, language and literature. So if we have more ways for them to prove that the competency in their language, we are going to obtain a lot more seals every year. And I believe that we have all that we need. What we just need is to start working it. So as you can see, the STEM, we're deciding which one to use. We started with the STEM test. The thing is that, as I told you before, you need to pass the 4 components in order to get the approval for that language. But if you fail only one of them, you have to retake the whole test the next year. But apparently with the Apple test, we have the advantage that they can only take the single part that they missed, and they can bank the other ones that they took on previous years. So that way it's more advantageous for the kids. So we are working on that to see if that can happen. And
Is that, so that's not a for sure, that's a request that you're working on, or is that a?
yeah, we are trying to decide if we can use the Apple test instead of the STEM test, because they have more benefits for the kids to obtain the seal. As I was, what is not the seal? It's not an actual seal on their diploma. It's some information that they're going to get in their transcript. So when they pull their transcript and they give that to the person who is going to hire them, they can see in one section that they got the silver seal or the golden seal of biliteracy. And we have the support of the Kansas Department of Education, who is trying to promote that as well. We have had people in the district being part of the committee for the seal of biliteracy. I actually was for a couple of years, but I stepped down. But Mrs. Diaz is in there right now, and before that there were other people. So we have been working from the inside to promote that and to implement that into our district. And also, this is also good for the kids because once that they set a goal, I want to get the seal, they are going to work harder with the KELPA test, with the ACTs, because they know that in order to get the seal, they need to get a good score in the ACT or the KELPA test. So if you see this, it's an incentive for them to get better in other sections that we also would like to promote. Like we want the kids to get a good scores in their ACTs, the KELPA test and all that. So.
Excuse me, can I ask a question of how much it costs to take these stamp or Apple tests?
Oh, the money, Monica?
Actually, we have a scheduled meeting for Friday to check into the Apple test, because that's new and we haven't had that. So we have a meeting with a consultant from Apple testing on Friday. And I think there was a slide, I think it was $95.
Yeah, it was.
Was it on there? Sorry.
I didn't see it either.
I believe that it was 20.
Oh, here it
95
is.
is the AP test.
Oh, that's the
Yeah,
AP test, okay.
And the AP test, the students pay for it.
It's not very expensive. I think it is like $20.
$20.
The stamp test is 20,
I
okay,
have to look that up.
thank you.
And it's like a $5 per component. So if they just miss one of them, let's say the speaking part, which is the most difficult part, then the following year they can prepare for the whole year for the next time, and they can only have to pay for only $5 to get that section of the test passed again.
Thank you.
I have a question. You may have answered it, but on that, like the Apple test, what is the time period that they can retake each section? Is it once a year they can take it, or can they take it multiple times a year till they pass one, or?
The Apple test, they can, we haven't met with the people yet, so, but according to my understanding, they can take several times during the year the Apple test. The STEM test, they cannot take that many times. So that's another advantage of that we are trying to consider to move from the STEM test into the Apple test. And I believe that there are some statistics at the end, like a,
Oh, is there more?
yes.
Sorry.
Those are the ones that they got this year. So remember that they have to pass not only the second language, also they have to pass the English section. Ironically, there were more kids that passed in the second language component than the English. It's really difficult for the kids to get a high score in English in their ACTs. And since they didn't have the state assessments last year because of COVID and all that, it was their ways to prove that their competence in English was reduced. And hopefully we will have more ways for them to, yes ma'am?
Oh, you can finish your sentence. I was just curious, are all of these students that completed this, are they all ESL students?
No.
So there's some that English is their
Yes.
first language?
That actually, that's one thing, that I have non-native speakers in my classes,
Okay.
and they also taking the test.
Mhm.
And they're also passing the test.
Mhm.
Yeah. So can you see that not all of them, they passed all the components, but pretty much half of the students, they passed the test.
Mhm.
We tested 55 of them, and 24, they passed the foreign language part. So I believe that we were really successful. And the thing is that there were a few that they only passed 3 out of the 4 components. We could have banked those for next year, but since that's not feasible with a STEM test, we couldn't do that this year. But we are hoping that next year, if we can do the other one, we can just start accumulating what they do on 1 year, because if they take another year of the foreign language, that they will improve their language, so the next time that they retake the test, they can do better, way better than the first time. And most of them are seniors or juniors, because we were restricting the students to that level, because we wanted to start small. We didn't want to make the mistakes that, the novice mistakes that we always do at the beginning, the learning curve. We wanted to keep it with a small group, but since we were so successful last year, I believe that we can be a little bit bolder this year and start testing more kids, not just the seniors, for the ESL department. So as you can see, most of them were taking Spanish, and there were a few that they also took English. Then your question about how many ESL students that they were taking the test, and from the ESL department, the 18% were the ESL students. The other ones were coming from my regular classes.
Very interesting.
Any questions?
One or two quick ones here. First of all, how many world language instructors do we have at the high school?
At this moment, we have a French teacher, and we have 2 Spanish teachers. We haven't had a Spanish 1 teacher since the last year and a half. We're in the need of a new teacher for the Spanish 1.
Okay.
But it's been complicated to hire people at this time, so they're kind of challenging times.
But they have an option of working through their AP instructor as well. According to that, it looked like.
Well, yeah, we offer AP Spanish, language and culture. I would like to have another class for the AP Spanish language language and literature, which would also be good for the kids, because that will help them to with their literacy. Research has shown that it really doesn't matter if you learn your skills from one language, you can transfer all those to any other language. So if I learn how to read and get meaning out of a text in Spanish, I can transfer that into when I'm reading in English as well. So I believe that it'll be beneficial for them also, for my kids, to have another way that they can get the seal through another AP class. But it doesn't have to be an AP class. You can get the foreign language component approved by taking the STEM test or the Apple test. And there are other ways that you can also get it. There's a list of several times. So if you're in an IB program, in International Baccalaureate, also you can get it. There are many other ways that you can get the proof that you know the language. And one of them is by doing a portfolio. If there is no assessment, like it's a small language, only spoken for not that many people, so you can do your portfolio, and then you can prove that you you are competent in that language.
I had one other one, just dying to ask, this one's probably off base, but Wichita East has had for many, many years an International Baccalaureate program. And some of that has to do with this very same kind of focus for those students. Are you familiar with that at all, and how this relates and doesn't relate to the International Baccalaureate?
Well, unfortunately, we don't offer the IB program. It's like a really, we have to train for that. We have to apply for that. There are a lot of specific rules that we need to follow to get approval, and that will require a lot of work to get it done. But some other schools, big schools, they besides having the AP classes, they also offer the IB classes.
Well, I only ask because it's such my sense is it's a draw for certain students to go to that high school because they offer that. And so this sort of sounds like that same kind of opportunity for some students. And so it's exciting, and it's exciting what's already been accomplished. So, I applaud you for it. I wonder whether, can you give them the seal to wear at graduation?
We're thinking about giving them medals when they graduated. So that will be also a way so they can visualize all the effort and all they have done. Because, it's not that, it doesn't mean the same as if you read the transcript, you see a line, golden seal.
Right.
So, but for the kids, it is more important, like, hey, I got the medal when I was graduating. So.
Great.
Well, I'm really looking forward to the further promotion of this program. I think just what you said, that it can offer to community members as well, businesses and different organizations, and just the opportunity that it brings students. So I honestly wish that this was already, because I always try and tell my kids to, how beneficial it is to speak two or more languages, and they don't listen to their parents, at a certain stage. So anyway, well done. Thank you for sticking with it and just keeping going and expanding. That's awesome. So I look forward to continue to hear about its progress.
We're hopeful that this is going to be the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda, unless you've passed your job off to someone else.
Last week I did.
We're glad you're here.
Last week I was a statistic.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
I'm glad to be back and not be a statistic anymore.
Yes.
So. All right, so our mid-year update, and hopefully, I completely redid all of this, so I hope all the links work, so.
Just tries to give it more pizzazz.
Yeah, how do you pizzazz? Okay, Dana.
It's partly my fault. I said I would come up with music, and I have failed you.
Yeah, there you go. All right, priorities during COVID. We've had 3 that essentially bear pretty equal weight, if you will. There really isn't one that I think probably needs to be top or the other. But we want our students face-to-face. We want the safety of staff and students. And we want to run school as normal as possible. Those were our 3 priorities, if you will, when we started the school year this year. All right, we're going to go through. On our website, we have different resources, if you will, for our families and community.
Can I click on the links?
I hope so. Yay. Okay, the first one is, at the beginning of the year, the health department worked with us to kind of honor our priorities, if you will, when we said we wanted to keep students in school as much as possible. We know that the health department quarantines all of us if we get COVID, but what does that actually look like, and how long, and how can we keep kids in school? And I can tell you from personal experience from friends across the country, that sometimes the health department will come in and say, there's one positive, and they send everybody home. But we told the health department, if you can work with us, we really want to keep kids in school. And so they came up with this protocol, and it is on our website, and I think, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. I think this will be changing a little bit in the next week or so. But essentially, it does talk about if you are symptomatic, what happens, and if you're asymptomatic, what happens. It does make a difference if you're vaccinated. And then if you test positive, how long do you have to stay home? What are the options if you're quarantined, vaccinated or no vaccine? And it goes through all of that. And I think you can, yeah. There is an option on the bottom, option 3 there says pending staff supplies availability. There's an option to test and come back early if you're quarantined. We haven't done that because of one, lack of resources potentially of being able to test, and two, the health department being able to get to do their what I want to call it, close contacts and doing their investigations. So right now it is quarantine at home for 14 days of the date of last exposure, and that's what I think will be changing. And then for our kiddos at school, if they are exposed and are not positive, they can stay in school and wear the mask for 14 days, or they can quarantine at home for 14 days. So those right now are their 2 options. So if they don't want to wear a mask, then they stay home for the 14 days of quarantine.
I have a couple of questions on
Uh-huh.
that. Would you? Okay. You mentioned that there may be some changes coming up.
Mhm.
Are you suspecting that the quarantines are going to shorten, or do you
Yes.
know?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then, I was curious if it's been presented even from Dr. Fauci about how those vaccinated are also still spreading it and catching it. So has the health department communicated to you that perhaps taking out the, what I'm getting at is, will we begin to treat vaccinated and unvaccinated employees and students the same? Because right now on this flow chart, it's different options.
It is different options. It does make a difference if they're a household contact or not. And I don't want to quote wrong what the health department does as far as their quarantine, but if it's someone in your house and you have no way of getting away from them, then that quarantine is different than if it's somebody, say we met here tonight and you got an exposure tonight and then you go back and, you know, you've been now you're a close contact.
Right.
So that makes a difference whether you live with them and you can't get away from them for a long period of time. That's what happened to my husband, or that's what happened to me. I'm not sure which way that went, but that makes a difference as well. So I don't think I answered your question, but it is up to the health department to quarantine, and they look at vaccinated, non-vaccinated, as well as whether it's a household contact.
And then I was wondering about that option 3. You mentioned we hadn't used it because there was concerns of supplies, yet the health department is, and you may not, this is more on them maybe than you, we recently did the drive-up COVID test, and that was offered to people with and without symptoms, correct?
Correct.
So I guess it surprises me that the option 3 isn't more available.
I will tell you, and Michelle has left here this evening, but I visited with her before we came over here tonight, and she told me that some of the offices in town that normally did COVID testing have closed down due to lack of supplies. And one of them said they had 125 test kits, and they were about out, and they knew that they had 125 more coming in another week, but then that was it. So I think they're starting to see some limit on supplies. Right now, Michelle feels confident that we've got enough to do what we need to do with staff and students,
Right.
you know, for our families, but I think we're gonna see some tightening up of that in the community perhaps.
And I'm not trying to interrogate you at all.
Sure, no.
I think all of our goal is to have healthy kids and
Right.
staff in school, and if you're sick, you need to be home, and so
Right.
we're doing the best we can to do that. I just, pushing to test healthy people that don't have symptoms, I worry that that test could go to someone that is sick, and if they can get a positive test, then they know they can get the medications they need. So I really wasn't trying to put you in a corner on that, but because you and Dr. Carlin communicate with the health department, that's my closest
And
contact.
Jennifer, I might add a little that I think some of Michelle's reservation on that is the resources are twofold. It's the testing supplies, and it's also the manpower to do the tests. So with a lot of the test to stay programs across the state, kids that are in that protocol have to go every morning and do a test, and as long as that test is negative, then they're able to go to school. So that means you've got to test all of these kids, and I think it's more of a manpower issue. We did get a grant from, I think, KDHE
Well,
to
and I
help
don't-
with some of the testing
I
supplies.
hope we're never testing kids every morning.
Well, that's what the test to stay protocol is
Oh,
for
I
close
understand.
context to have to,
I wish we'd go back to looking at, you know, if you're running a fever, you shouldn't be at school no matter what it is.
right.
That's my goal.
But I think that's when we talk about why we're not doing as much of option 3, is because I think Michelle questions, will we have the manpower and the number of tests available if we fully implemented that? And that hasn't been our intention all along.
You know, because I think one of the pharmacies here in town had kits for $20 or something like that, self-test kits. But they flew off the shelf, I think, in a day, and they're not available. So I don't know whether they'll become available, but apparently the testing is not complicated, or at least it's been made easier with some of these kits, assuming that they work. But, so maybe, I mean, it's a supply thing. If there's more supply, then maybe 3 will become more of an option.
Yeah.
And part of the reason, this is just my own rationale, but part of the reason number 3 isn't needed as much is because the health department does let our kids stay in class if they're a close contact, if they wear a mask. So there isn't that need, all they have to do is keep on a mask, and they have to wear that mask for 14 days, but they can stay in school. So we're keeping them in school without testing them every single day as well.
Yeah, it's just a mask or no mask thing.
Right. And we've had some parents opt to no mask, and they kept their kids home for the quarantine period.
You know, this goes without saying, but it's so interesting with the latest variants that is highly contagious, and yet you may not ever know you had it from the standpoint of symptoms. You may be asymptomatic. You know, it's just kind of curious where we go with this stuff. I mean, we've been doing that all along, but yet, you know, I have super good friends I admire. They're fully vaccinated and boosted and still had it, and or still got it, and may or may not be asymptomatic, but I know for me, I wanted to do testing just to be sure that, I mean, I think I'm fully vaccinated, but I just didn't want to be a carrier because I'm in this kind of environment. And so the tests would be handy, and yet I kind of wonder, you know, how are we knocking ourselves out? I don't want to be non-sympathetic to the concerns and the realities that are out there because it's so variant in the effects, person by person, from the standpoint of making sure we each remain healthy in that, particularly in that one goal. But boy, what a critter. If we get in an environment where the common cold, so to speak, is as common as the common COVID, and where do we go with this? And that's one of the challenges I think we as a body have, so.
All of these forms are on our website under starting schools, so you can find them all there if you wish to look at them again, but I think we can move on to the next one, Heath.
You want to do any of these?
The color levels is fine.
Okay.
So this is just a description of how we identify so that parents know. So if the classroom is green, there are no positive cases in there. Everybody is fine. If it's yellow, there has been a positive in that classroom. And so we are taking steps to notify the families and to let them know that their child may be a close contact in that classroom. Red is if there have been 3 or more positive cases that are tracked back to exposure in the classroom. So if you're in the classroom, but you got it because you attended your aunt's wedding last weekend or 2 weekends ago, then that isn't an exposure in the classroom, so you don't count toward that. So it's actually 3 exposures that are tracked back to being shared in the classroom. And then that classroom would be red, which means everybody in there goes home for the quarantine period.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If the dates are changed on your protocol, will the dates change for that yellow as well? The 14 days on that?
So on the yellow, so what we're doing right now is we use that quarantine period that's established by the health department. And right now we are using the 14 days. So from the onset or when they were last there, 14 days forward. So yes, that potentially could change as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Glenda, I think it's important to when Glenda said, if the classroom turns red, then everybody goes home. That's not because that's our policy. That's a decision the health department then makes to quarantine every student in that class. So that is not that the district has decided to close that classroom. These colors are ways we communicate with parents as to what's going on with that, but the actual sending those kids home, that's because those kids are, and the staff members are quarantined as a result of the health
And are
department.
they doing that in other businesses in the community? Are they following that same guideline?
I don't know.
And the health department does make all the contacts with the family for the kids that are quarantined. So they make those phone calls at night and say your classroom has gone red and we're quarantining your children.
I have one more question. I know like the test kits that you were talking about, the $20, the way I understand it is sometimes, I mean, that'll pick up COVID-19, but it also picks up old COVID from before COVID-19. So when these are factored in here, is this like COVID-19 only test? Or is this, if somebody does a home test, that's factored in?
The home test, we ask them to come in and verify it with our nurses and do the testing that we have.
Okay, thanks.
So this is our school status and classroom status chart. It is also available online. So we have each building and all of the teachers listed that have classrooms. And if they are yellow, then there's a positive in there. So if a parent is worried, hey, I might have missed that email or that remind message, they can go on to the website and pull up their child's classroom and see if they're yellow or green or red. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just wanted you to see it. This is the district plan that is required to be turned in order to get ESSER's money. So each of these questions, and it's several pages long, we have to answer for the federal government in order to get those ESSER's dollars, and that plan has to be posted on our website. So it is, again, like I said, several pages long. How we are addressing COVID, what safety precautions are we taking, how are we communicating to families, how are we doing the screening, all of those questions have to be answered for the federal government so that we can get ESSER's funding. So that is a very lengthy document, and we really felt like probably parents aren't going to want to go line by line and find what the information they need. So what we did is we went and put a one-page summary together. That's also on the website right underneath this, and it just gives the high points, if you will. So preventative measures are strongly encouraged, masks are optional. It goes through continued emphasis on hand washing, and you can go down through that. The building ventilation is in the district plan. And then what learning opportunities it addresses. If you have a student with an IEP, for example, you can take the health and risk factors into consideration when you write that IEP. Virtual learning had to be addressed somewhere on there, so we put in there that we have virtual learning available for grades 7 through 12. So that is our one-page summary.
Good job on boiling that down to a one-page summary.
Hey, I tell you what. we were working it, let me tell you. All right, current data. I know this is what you're on the edge of your seats for. So Finney County new positive cases, we just added this last week, so you can see that those numbers have gone up. Positivity rate for testing, again, back up. Local hospital COVID patients, that went down just a little bit. The average daily patients in ICU has not changed, though. And the average daily, is that just COVID patients in ICU, or is that beds full? No, it's beds full. I'm sure that's another one I ask every meeting. It's quite all right, Jennifer.
They just have it available.
That's what I thought, so I wasn't sure.
Okay, USD 457, new positive student test. So the top line is year-to-date. The bottom line is by the week, and you can see what we did last week. Doubled, went back up to one of those highs that we had in November. That was last week. Students sent home also went up just a little bit last week. We didn't have a full week of school, so that will skew that number just a little bit. Daily absences by week. These are our students, and again, this is going to be skewed a little bit because there's just a few days. And I will say that I do think that there was some impact on that first day with the ice and the cold weather. There were a lot of kids that stayed home that day. So again, a little skewed probably. Weekly attendance went down last week, and we were doing so good too, but
You can blame the weather.
it wasn't the weather, okay. I'll take your word for it.
You can blame it.
Okay. All right, staff daily absences by week. So the top line is all staff, all absences, and I have to kind of look down at the bottom to make sure because I always kind of screw this up. Then the gray is classroom staff, all absences. And then the red is all staff because of COVID. And then the yellowish line, golden line is classroom staff because of COVID. So the first one is red is all absences, yellow is classroom. New positive staff per week. So the top line is our running total. The bottom line is each week. So you can see we jumped up to 23 staff last week. Substitute data, this one makes Heath sad because we are struggling to fill some of those positions when we have so many calling in sick. Number of students quarantined a day, that average went up last week. Okay. Return from break. So what you didn't see on those graphs. So last week we had 44 students test positive and 64 staff test positive. They did the screening clinic that you mentioned, tested 222 people. Those were not all school personnel or school people. 98 students and staff, and of those 21 were positive. They had about 52 or 53 positives, but some of those were community members that wanted to be tested. Monday, January 10th, today was a banner day, if you will. 20 staff were positive and 18 students today. We have at this time only 3 of our buildings that are green, if you will, and that is Edith Sherman, Plymell, and the Transportation Department. There's at least 1 positive case in every other building that we have in the district. And some have multiples. We had a meeting last week with the Finney County Health Department, and we also met with KSDE. And they both indicated that there would be changes coming forth regarding quarantine. They could be expected as soon as next week. However, depending on who you talk to, some people think that that's going on right now. But what we were told from our health department and from KSDE is that those 2 entities are at least waiting until we get it in writing from the State Department of Health, so KDHE. So when we get it in writing from them, then we implement it. The reason I say that that may not always be the case is we've had some families call in today, and what our health department is doing is they're sending several cases a day to the state for contact tracing because they can't handle the load right now by themselves, and the state has offered to help. So they're sending upwards of 50 cases a day to the state for contact tracing, and the people at the state told some of our parents today that they only had to quarantine for 5 days. And so then they called the school nurse and said, hey, we only have to quarantine for 5 days, right? Well, what we're being told by KSDE and our local health department is not until we get it in writing, but we do expect that to be soon. So we think we may be changing in a week or so. That would shorten the quarantine if symptoms have improved or are gone. So they said that that's very important to note. So if somebody is still symptomatic, just like Jennifer said, please don't come to school. So, but if you don't have any symptoms after 5 days, then you can go ahead and come back. That's what that would allow. It would impact the quarantine on household contacts that were unvaccinated, and it would impact the quarantine of positive staff and students if they were symptom-free after 5 days. So instead of that whole 14 days that we were potentially keeping some of our staff out, if they were asymptomatic or if they had symptoms that were gone after 5 days, they could come back then sooner. So it would help our sub rate potentially. Questions?
I mean, help it out a lot, I would think, so.
Yeah, I think it will help a lot.
Quick question on how we're doing with substitutes?
Today was tough. It was our lowest fill rate since probably last week of August, first week of September. We had 38% fill rate today. But before that, it's been really good, 70%. But today was rough.
I'll jump in there too. We don't know for sure, but there may be a proposal going to the state board this week that would give us some flexibility with increasing our sub pool. It may be temporarily adjusting the requirements for to get a sub license. That's something that could help us a little bit. So if you happen to be communicating with our local state board member, you might let her know your feelings on that. We're obviously there would still be a background check and some requirements, but it would temporarily relax some of the other requirements and may give us an opportunity to increase our pool. And if it happens, we will be going after that aggressively to get that information out. Because I don't think there's anything right now that's probably more stressful to our teachers than the fact that they're having to, when only 38% of the absences are covered, they're having to scramble to be able to cover classrooms, and that's primarily fallen on our teachers right now.
I know I had a family member that applied for sub credentials and got it in a week, I think. So it was pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, they are trying to move quicker too, I think, so.
So license is a kind of a bottleneck sometimes, the actual teaching license with the state, and then the background check that goes through KVI can also be a bottleneck at times, and those two things are kind of out of our control, but yeah, we're trying to process those as quickly and at least get them into the system as quickly as possible, and the state's been doing their work trying to communicate with both of those. Number one, internal agency, but also KVI, to see what they can do to make that speed up a little bit.
Great.
Anyone else have questions or comments? It's a lot of information. I guess we'll move on to new business then. Discussion of the Board of Education vacancy.
I forwarded each of the board members Janine's resignation that she submitted earlier today. So that becomes effective immediately when a board member resigns their position. So you have some options here going forward. You have an option to fill that vacancy if you so choose. If you choose not to do that, then that vacancy will be filled at the next election, which is quite a ways away. But that's up to the pleasure of the board. Should you choose to fill it, then you will need to pass a resolution that publishes a notice of that vacancy and wait 15 days before you take any action as a board. Once that notice has been published and the required waiting period is over, then it is completely up to the sitting board of how you want to fill that vacancy. You don't have to do anything tonight on it. If you would like to, then we have a resolution ready for you to be able to publish. But if you would rather let us get some options together for you, this board has, this district has filled vacancies in the past, but there are other methods to do that as well that I know other districts have used. So since it happened here not too long ago, I probably am not as prepared tonight with those options for you, but it's up to you. If you want to wait and publish the resolution when you know exactly how you intend to fill it, you could do that. You could publish that and announce that later. Or you could let it sit and wait until the next election and proceed with 6 board members.
I would like to do what's the pleasure of the board, so kind of hearing what everyone else's comments are, and then we can go from there.
You want to start at that end, or?
You go first?
Sure. I'd probably like to wait and look at options to see, since we're new in particular, it'd be nice to see what options we have.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I'd like to take some time, kind of table it, just look at some options. Go a little further down the road and have Dr. Carlin present us some other information to help us make a better decision.
I'm fine with that as well. When I looked at the state statutes, I kind of thought we had to publish the 15 days. So that was kind of my expectations, but if that's not the case and we can table it and get options, I'm fine with that as well.
It's the case, but it's just a question of timing. If we're gonna fill it, we have to publish it and wait 15 days. But the question I have is, can we do that? And then, as you said, we can do whatever we want to. It's just that the statute says, if you're gonna fill it, you've gotta publish it.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm good either way. We can just wait and talk about that some more. My inclination would be to publish, get that out of the way, because it doesn't bind us in any way and we have to do it. That also puts announcement out there to the community of the vacancy, that kind of thing. But again, that's just my thought.
I agree with looking at all the options, what we have first.
I'm comfortable with that too. Often our procedure for anything that comes up, we usually wait till the next meeting to take action. So I know this is kind of a different situation, but I would be more comfortable with allowing Dr. Carlin to get us some more information, especially with 3 new board members on here. So
Our next meeting is the 27th, and so I
Correct.
wonder, can that information be made available to us in an email prior to that? And so that way we are able to take action at the next meeting one way or the other?
Yes. Yeah, you'll have it either this Friday or next Friday.
Okay, great.
anything else on that?
No, ma'am?
Okay. So we'll go to board open discussion, self-evaluation. Who would like to start first?
Start on that end.
Make Jackie go first?
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be here.
I'll go last.
Oh, okay. I don't have anything specific, I guess, at this point, except to say I look forward to working with everybody, and it's kind of interesting to be sort of one of the first board meetings for some of us, and yet we have this really unusual resignation, which is unusual. But I look forward to us working through it. I know we've got a great board here, so I'm excited to move forward, as well as a great district based on the presentations today. And I just hope the COVID numbers and the substitute teacher thing gets better soon. I don't have anything other than those comments.
Yeah, just Happy New Year and welcome to the board. I'm really looking forward to working with our new members as well. I'm just looking forward to a new year, see what it has in store for us. Yeah, I appreciate all the presentations that were given tonight. I appreciate the efforts of all of our teachers and staff, of course, towards that end of the semester. My kid was really struggling, so thank you for your patience and putting up with the students. And yeah, we're full steam ahead. Boy, I mean, things are just moving. I think there's been already matches and games and practices and all kinds of things. So here we go.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that a little bit. Thanks for all the presentations tonight. Obviously, we're new and we're gonna continue to learn. We may have a lot of questions, but appreciate y'all coming in and presenting. The presentations were very educational, so look forward to serving the board.
I also really enjoyed hearing all of the wonderful things that are going on in our district, and look forward to working with everyone to tackle the issues that we have. And I'm excited for this opportunity and hope that I can represent our constituents well.
I'll go and then I won't forget you.
Okay.
I'm telling myself now so I won't forget. Well, I want to welcome you guys to the board, and I'm going to thank you in advance for your patience in me learning to lead the meetings, but you did it to me, so no, I'm just kidding.
You asked for it.
I kind of asked for it. So thank you for that. That means a lot, and hopefully I can live up to my predecessors who've led the way. And getting back into school, I know there were some drama kids that missed the first 2 days of high school because they were at Kansas Thespians in Wichita. And I'm sure they'll be sharing the news soon, but we have several that qualified for the International Festival this summer. And I want to especially thank our drama and music department that supports them and allows them to go and compete with the big schools that come from clear across the state too, and they're right up there with them. So that's something to be proud of as a district. There's kids that are going to move on and be successful from a lot of those programs. So thank you for that. And Dr. Carlin?
Thanks. One of the things we're hoping to be able to do is do more of the recognitions again. That's something that has slowed down a little bit with what all the adjustments we've made with COVID. So Jennifer, hopefully that'll be a group. It's good to hear that, and we want to get back in the swing of having kids here to recognize them for those accomplishments. Congratulations to Jackie, John, and Cammie. What a meeting to start, right? I mean, so, and we're not done quite yet. So, but, and then important to note, the four of us will be participating in some new board member training on Saturday. So thanks to those folks for giving some time on your weekend and in order to participate. That I think it's in Topeka, so it's not like it's really close to here either. And then, I think lastly, just maybe a little explanation. So the COVID presentation was a little long and a little covered stuff that we probably haven't looked at a lot since back in July or August. And that was, again, for the benefit of new board members. In general, that plan gives me the authority to make adjustments based on our local data when we have things happening in our schools. When numbers are getting to the point that we might have to shut down a school or to maybe anticipate some of that, to take some preventative measures. But to do something on a district-wide basis would really require a board action. That was how that plan was approved and the intent of that. Not suggesting that anything's appropriate, but just wanting to make sure that we all have the same understanding for how that plan works. It may be too restrictive, it may not be restrictive enough, but that is the board's role here, is to set that policy and to set that function. So you will get lots of information. I think you've probably been starting to get some of that in the material that we send you about what's going on. But just understanding from the policy perspective what we have right now, but it is up to this group to determine if that's appropriate or it needs to be changed or needs to be something completely different. So lots to think about. So all right, with that, that's all I have. We've got a couple more things to do.
Okay, yep. Our next board meeting will take place on Thursday, January 27th, 2022 at 5:30 in the City Commission Chambers, City Administration Building. And then I believe we're going to go into executive session.
Madam President, I move we go into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss a complaint filed against the district with our legal counsel pursuant to the exception for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under COMA, beginning at, do you guys need time? Or should we go straight in?
We got to get the Zoom up, don't we? Yeah,
So, what do you think?
8:55 maybe?
8:55, okay. Beginning at 8:55, and the open meeting will resume in the board meeting room, so it said 20 minutes at,
Quarter after.
yeah, quarter after, 9:15, okay. Are we gonna stay in here, in the,
Yes.
okay, so in the, what's this thing called? City Commission chamber?
I just read it.
And I would like to invite Dr. Carlin, Heath Hogan, Jennifer Cunningham, Randy Grizel, and Alan Glendenning.
And Mr. Grizel won't be able to join.
Okay.
Well, then I will second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed.
Okay, we got a minute or two here.